Welcome to Robert Morris University's Department of Arts and Humanities and Ashcat Theater's virtual production of The Importance of Being Earnest, a trivial comedy for serious people in a Zoom call, directed and adapted by Barbara Burgess-Lefebvre. We're happy to have you here. Making theater during these times is a challenge, and I'm very proud of the work that the RMU students and alumni have done to have something so special to present to you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our production of The Importance of Being Earnest.
Do you hear us playing, Lane? Lane?
I didn't think you were polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression.
Yes, sir.
Must you wear a mask, even on Zoom?
It just seems safer this way, sir.
I should like to see your face.
I don't think that would be prudent, sir. I'm taking all necessary measures in this unprecedented time.
We've been living this way for a year, Lane. The time is certainly precedented. Have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
They are outside your door, sir. You see, I anticipate your needs before you are even aware of them.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe Mr. Ernest Worthing is entering the call, sir.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe customary in the society takes some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself, and when one is in the country, one amuses other people. Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such a reckless extravagance for one so young?
I'm expecting a call from Aunt Augusta, and she loves cucumber sandwiches. I expect to make her drool with envy.
That seems unnecessarily wicked.
One must amuse oneself in these times.
And will Gwendolyn be on this call? That would be perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well. But I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't require proof of you being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It was almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
Well, I am in love with Gwendolyn, and I have called you expressly to propose to her.
I thought you called for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. And in any case, you aren't engaged, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary numbers of bachelors that one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. Before I allow you to marry her, you have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? I've never heard of anyone of the name. Cecily before.
Lane,
Yes, sir.
bring me that cigarette case Mr. Willing left last time he dined here.
I'll leave it outside your door, sir.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all of this time? I wish to goodness you would have let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was not nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you'd offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Oh, well, there's no good offering a large reward now that the thing has been found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter for now that I look at the inscription side and find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it is mine. You have seen me with it hundreds of times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read a private cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present for someone the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you wish to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming old lady she is, too.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt? From little Cecily with her fondest love to dear Uncle Jack.
Oh, well, some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what size she may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't make it out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Earnest.
It isn't Earnest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Earnest. I've introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You answer to the name of Earnest. You look as if your name was Earnest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd saying that your name isn't Earnest.
Well, my name is Earnest in town, and it's Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily calls you her uncle. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing. May I mention I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist. And I'm quite sure of it now.
A Bunburyist? So what on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll review to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you're kind enough to inform me why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses to me as her uncle, for motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admiral governess, Miss Prism.
Which doesn't explain why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
My dear Algie, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives, and you are hardly serious enough, but when one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone of all subjects. It is one's duty to do so, and as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name Earnest, who gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the truth. It's pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you are Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may come up to town as often as you like. I've invented a valuable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may go down into town whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly valuable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight, for I've been really committed to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
Well, I haven't asked you to dine with me at all tonight.
I know. You are careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people as much as not receiving invitations.
Well, it isn't safe to dine inside at any rate. You had better much dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I have the smallest intention of doing anything of that kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. And I know perfectly well whom she'll place me next to tonight. She'll place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. It is not very pleasant, indeed it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their husbands is perfectly scandalous.
Well, I don't know anyone is having dinner parties at all.
Aunt Augusta spritzes everyone with disinfectant and sets a table a mile across. It's terrible. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I actually want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him anyway. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. So I think I'm going to get rid of Earnest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with Mr. Bun, with your invalid friend who has an absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, we'd be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl I have ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none. That must be Aunt Augusta. Now, if I get you out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight?
Very well, but we're eating outside.
Oh, Mother, your microphone is muted.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon.
Now your camera, Mother.
Bugger.
Same time.
Good afternoon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Well, they are not quite the same thing. In fact, those two things rarely go together. Oh, Mr. Worthing, you are behaving yourself as well, I trust?
Of course, yes.
Of course, yes. What?
Of course, yes, Lady Bracknell. And you are quite perfect yourself, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I apologize for being late, Algernon. Oh, are those cucumber sandwiches?
They are quite delightful.
I do so love cucumber sandwiches.
And these are particularly delicious. Shall I have some delivered to you? Lane, could you ring in?
I'm watching my show.
Just pause your show for a moment.
Yes.
Please make up some sandwiches and have them sent to Lady Bracknell.
I'm afraid you've eaten the last of the cucumbers. I went to the market for those this morning. Risked my life to do that. Are you asking me to go back to the market and risk my life again?
Oh, really? No cucumbers? That's a shame.
No, sir, not a one.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I can wait until dinner. I have quite the treat for you tonight, Algernon. I am setting you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a lovely young lady and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them together.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give it the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I should hope not, Algernon. It would throw my table completely out. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to this.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly to say, a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should with them.
This is very strange. Your friend Mr. Bunbury seems to be curiously very sick. Why can't you just call him?
No, he calls me to be there in person, from 6 feet away, naturally. I wave, which seems to cheer him immensely.
Well, I must tell you, Algernon, that I, for one, think it is high time for Mr. Bunbury to decide whether he wants to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the decision is absurd. I do not approve of this modern sympathy for invalids. I find it morbid. Illness of any kind should not be encouraged in anyone. Health is the very duty of life. I would be very much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me not to have a relapse on Sunday, for I require you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one requires something that will inspire conversation, particularly as it is the end of the season, when everyone has said almost everything that they have to say, which, in most cases, is not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta. If this, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Why don't you plan to play us a sample of what you plan to play so that we can judge?
But my piano is in the other room, and I find it vulgar when one moves about with the camera. The jostling motion is most improper.
Just play loudly. I'm sure we'll all hear you.
Oh, please do go. Into the other room.
Mm.
Algernon,
Right.
why are you still here?
What kind of host would I be if left you all alone? Very well.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
Oh, I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
Well, and I would like to take this opportunity of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mother has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about it.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of that fact, and I often wish that in public at any rate you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. Oh, we live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal, that has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that just inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, oh, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Oh, passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
Oh, my own Earnest.
Oh. But, you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
But personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Earnest. I don't really think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Oh, but, well, really, Gwendolen, I must say that I think there are a lot of much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious nickname for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. They would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only safe name is Earnest.
Oh, Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once then. I mean, we must be married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you have made me believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
Oh, I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
Best be quick about it. Mother is about to enter performance. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you beforehand I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
One moment. Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Oh, of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. Oh, I am afraid you have very little experience how to propose, though.
Oh, but my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All of my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, what wonderfully sincere eyes you have, Earnest. They are quite sincere. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from that semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mother, I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit it, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to choose for herself. Now, I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. Pray adjust yourself to a proper distance from the screen. I have no desire to inspect your pores.
Mother!
Hang up, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mother.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
I am sitting.
Sit better. I feel bound to tell you that I do not have you on my list of eligible young men. However, I am prepared to enter your name should your answers be what any truly affectionate mother desires. How old are you?
29.
29, a very good age to be married at. I am of the firm belief that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. What do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
You have a house in town? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn must live in town.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square.
What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. It's a pity. I thought we had something. However, it can be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To have lost one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be seen as a misfortune, To lose both looks like carelessness. What was your father's name?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents, but it would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. Well, I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of the very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time.
Where did this charitable gentleman find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, but Lady Bracknell, it was a somewhat large, a black leather handbag with handles to it. It was just an ordinary handbag, in fact.
Where did Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
It was in the cloakroom at the Victoria station. It was given to him by mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria station?
Yes, but it was the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must confess to being somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to show a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family.
But may I ask you then, what would you advise me to do? I hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. But I could produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What does it have to do with me?
But you just
imagine that I, or Lord Bracknell, would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel.
Good Lady Bracknell.
Day, Mr. Worthing.
Did it go right, old boy?
No.
You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you?
No. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I really don't know what a gorgon is like, but I'm pretty sure Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. But I beg your pardon, Algie. I assume I shouldn't talk about your aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them.
I really think that Gwendolyn could become like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their trait. No man does this. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about you being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. Oh, what extraordinary ideas you have for ways to behave to a woman.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh, before the end of the week I shall have gotten rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in the families. You better say severe chill.
And you're sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything like that?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite. She goes on long walks and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She's excessively pretty and only 18.
Well, have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is just 18?
Oh, one just doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends, and I bet you anything, about half an hour after they met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they've called each other a lot of other things first.
Bish bosh.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Oh, Algie! Kindly leave the call. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn? I don't think I can allow this at all.
Oh, Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
Oh, my own darling.
Oh, Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mother's face, I fear we never shall. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, dear Gwendolyn.
Oh, the story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mother, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deep fibers of my nature. Your Christian name just has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town Zoom address at the Albany I have. What is your Zoom address in the country?
Well, I will put it in the chat below, my love.
Ah, there is Wi-Fi, I suppose.
Yes.
It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require some serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
Oh, my own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Oh, good. Algie, you can come back now.
Thanks. I'll turn her out already.
Ugh. Goodbye, Ernest.
Oh, farewell, my angel.
Lane, join the call.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane. I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall not be back till Monday. You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits. Is that my sherry?
I believe it is, sir.
I would like some.
I suppose that once again, I must risk my life to provide you idle distraction.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Cecily, your German grammar is on the table. Pray open page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how eager your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious, I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in someone so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a greater sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Ideal merriment and triviality be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come here sometime. We might have a positive influence over him.
I do not think even I can produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them. I see Dr. Tossable is calling.
Dr. Chasuble! This is indeed a pleasure.
Oh, pardon me. And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a private talk with you, Dr. Tossable.
Cecily, I have mentioned nothing about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking of that and not of my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Well, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I speak metaphorically. My metaphor is drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as, by all accounts, that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name's Letitia, Doctor.
Oh. A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have that conference with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a talk might do it good.
Oh, with pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German! Mr. Earnest Worthing. I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. So afraid he'll look like everyone else.
You're my little cousin, Cecily, I'm sure.
You're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm rather tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Earnest. My wicked cousin Earnest.
I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and really being good all this time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course I've been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter being with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world were not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid of no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about. Wait just a minute, would you?
Now where is she? But as I was saying, you're much too alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married.
The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that persistently remaining single, a man converts himself to a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally as attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
But where is Cecily? Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing!
This is indeed a surprise. We do not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Well, dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woes does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother?
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Earnest dead?
Oh, quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust you'll profit from it.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Oh, poor Earnest. He had his many faults, but it is sad. A sad blow.
Very, very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel. A severe chill, it seems.
As a man shows, so shall you reap.
Oh, charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
Well, you no doubt would wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. Oh, my sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in present case, distressing. I have preached it on harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festival days.
That reminds me, you mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject.
Yes, but is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes, yes.
Men who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
Oh.
But it is not for any child, dear doctor. The fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
Well, I don't remember anything about it, and of course I don't know if that sort of thing bothers you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Oh, not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Oh, You need have no apprehension. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5, if that suits you.
Perfectly, perfectly. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, oh, I am pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child!
What is the matter? Uncle Jack, do look happy. You look as if you had toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think called today? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother, Earnest.
What nonsense? I don't have a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. Where has he gone? He was just here.
These are very joyful tidings.
After we've all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me particularly distressing.
Oh, good heavens.
Oh, it's a miracle.
Brother John, I've called to tell you that I'm very sorry for the trouble I've given you, that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse to forgive him.
I think his coming down here is disgraceful, and I think he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been texting me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were on my side, but I must say that Brother John's coldness to me is particularly painful.
Uncle Jack, if you don't forgive Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it. I forgive you.
Oh, it's pleasant, is it? Is it not to see such a perfect reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, give them time alone.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful action today, dear child.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you must get out of this place as soon as possible. I will not allow you Bunburying here.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I think it is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually alive. I call it grotesque.
Your conduct here is an outrage. This Bunburying, as you call it, will not be a great success to you here.
I think it has been great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. Ah, there she is.
I was hoping you were still here.
He's going to send me away.
And have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Oh, if you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you'll order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop my delight in taking down from dictation. I've reached absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm quite ready for more.
Cecily, Ever since I looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how do we become engaged?
Well, ever since your Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who is very wicked and bad, you of course became the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is much talked about is very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you. The next day, I bought this little ring, and this is the little bangle of the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give that to you? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Our engagement was broken off.
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much indeed hurt to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. Now is when you kiss me.
I hope that was satisfactory.
Oh yes, it was just like all your other kisses.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily?
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
But my dear sweet child, do you mean to say you cannot love me if I had some other name? Algernon, for instance.
Algernon. I don't like the name Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you should object to a name of Algernon. It is not a bad name at all. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. If my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the practice and rites and ceremonies of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Torsable is most learned man.
I must see him at once on most important christening. I mean, most important business.
Oh.
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal into my diary. Gwendolyn Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in his philanthropic work in London. Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
Oh, nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
Ah, and you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not? perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Oh, you were on this call on business, I suppose.
Oh, no, I'm at home in Hertfordshire.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relatives.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, have the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh! It is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of mixed delight. Oh, I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you, but I am bound to state that now that I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were full 42 and more than usually plain for your age. You see, Earnest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Earnest?
Why, yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. His brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. Oh, Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would be terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there's no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Mr. Ernest and Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Huh. It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray, do so. You see, I never travel without my diary. One should have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry, Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different. I am known for the sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
Oh, from the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful, and I am never deceived in such manners. My first impressions of people are invariably right. Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such a pretty idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. This gentleman is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack. Look at his name there.
Earnest! Why does it say Jack Worthing?
Ah, yes.
Here is Earnest, see?
My own love.
Moment, Earnest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn?
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. We're going to put such an idea into your pretty little head.
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who was professing his love to you was my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
Yeah, I can't deny that.
Is your name really John?
Well, I could deny it if I liked, but my name is certainly John. It has been John for years.
Gross deception has been practiced on us both.
Oh, my poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn. There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Earnest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Earnest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Earnest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I have ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I am rarely quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have no intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you never a brother of any kind?
Never, not of any kind.
I am afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
Gwendolyn.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us speak privately. They will hardly venture to come after us.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I ever did in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to be bunburying around here.
That is absurd. One has the right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What on earth you are serious about? I haven't got the remotest idea.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. Plus, to say nothing of the fact, she is my ward.
And I can see no possible defense at all for you deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. And to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I just wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn. That is all.
Well, I want to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
And I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
How can you sit there calmly when we are in this horrible mess? I can't make it out. You seem to be perfectly heartless. I wish to goodness you would go.
Well, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Charleswell to be christened this evening.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up this nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Charleswell to be christened myself, and I naturally will take up the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it, and we both can't be christened Earnest. It's absurd. And besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I've ever been christened in my life by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Charleswell. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. And if you're not quite sure about you ever been christened before, I must think it's rather dangerous to venture out right now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very close connected with you was nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
The fact that they did not try to call into our private call as anyone else would have done seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left. You are perfectly sure they know how to call.
I'm not perfectly sure of anything.
Should we call them?
Absolutely not. They're calling.
Oh, how very forward of them. Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
We will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to see me up to town to see me as often as possible?
Or can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Well, their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have a stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes, I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Well, which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. Your Christian names are still an insurmountable barrier.
That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all?
But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
Well, how absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Gwendolyn! What? Dash it all!
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn! What is the meaning of this?
Mother. Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing.
Sit down! All of you, sit down immediately!
I am sitting again.
Mr. Worthing, apprised, sir, of my daughter's intentions by her trusted maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I discovered the address of this meeting. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a lengthier than usual lecture at the university extension program on the negative influences of a universal basic income on thought. I would not undeceive him of this. I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. You will therefore understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately. From this moment, on that point, as on indeed all of the points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. Now, as regards to Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
May I ask if you are presently with your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury?
No, I'm not with Bunbury. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I decided this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have a great deal of confidence in the opinion of his physicians. However, I am glad that he made a decision at the last to some definite course of action and acted with proper medical advice. Well, now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Worthing, may I ask, who is this young person that my nephew was gazing at in such an unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is something particularly exciting in the air this morning, but the number of engagements going on seems to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics has laid down for our guidance. A preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of the question. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew in any way connected to any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Why, until yesterday, I had no idea that there were persons or families whose origins were a terminus.
Yes. Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, and Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby, a firm of the highest position in their profession. In fact, I'm told one of the Mr. Markbys can occasionally be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
A life full of incident, but maybe perhaps a little bit too exciting for a young lady. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I must ask if Miss Cardew has any small fortune.
Oh, yes. It's about £135,000 in the funds. Oh, but that is all. Oh, goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
Just a moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000 and in the funds. Miss Cardew is a most attractive young lady, now that I look at her. Come closer, dear child, come closer. Yes. Oh, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair is as nature left it. But we will soon repair all of that, yes. Kindly turn around for me, dear sweet child. Turn around. No, dear, back. The side view is what I want, dear. The side, yes. It is just as I thought. There are distinct social possibilities in your future. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's future.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world. And I don't care two pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only those who cannot get into it do that. Well, I suppose I must now offer my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also call me Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Well, the wedding had better take place quite soon, I think. To be frank, I am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of discovering each other's character before the marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Well, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Mrs. Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent, and until she comes of age, and that consent I absolutely decline to give.
On what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, why, I would say almost ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one desire?
Well, it pains me very much to have to speak to you quite frankly, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is that I do not approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible!
Oh, I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon he spoke to my ward under the false pretense of being my brother, and under an assumed name he flirted shamelessly. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother, I have never had a brother, and I do not intend to have a brother, not of any kind. And I distinctly taught him that myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Well, that is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. Then my own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Cecily, how old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. No woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. Well, you soon will be of age and free from all restraints, so I don't think that your guardian's consent is a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to be a grave concern. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. I see no reason why our dear, sweet Cecily would not be even more attractive at the age you mention. And there will be a large accumulation of property by then.
Could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I must say seems to me to show a rather impatient nature. I beg you to reconsider your decision.
Oh, but my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You know perfectly well that what you propose is quite out of the question.
Well, then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself.
Oh, everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christenings? Isn't that somewhat premature?
Oh no, both of these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses.
Well, am I to understand then that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
Well, I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in another Zoom call.
Prism? Just a moment. Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Well, yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This may prove to be a matter of vital importance. Is this Miss Prism a woman of repellent aspect in any way connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Can one of you get her on the call? I must see her at once. Oh.
I hear you were waiting for me, dear Canon.
Prism. Prism? Where is the baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of a perambulator that contained an infant of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the efforts of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight on a random street corner in Bayswater. It contained a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in the pre-reanimator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I have written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscripts in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Oh, Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where did you deposit the handbag that contained that infant?
I left it in a cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Algy, call Lane to assist me. Gwendolen, wait for me here.
Oh, if you are not too long, I will wait for you here all of my life.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
His movements are most erratic. It looks as if he were having an argument. I dislike arguments of all kinds. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
I believe he has stopped now. Oh, no. I believe he's stopped now.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
Oh, this suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
I have returned. Miss Prism, is this the handbag that you are speaking of? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, there's an injury received through an upsetting of an omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. That bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby placed in it.
You?
Yes! Oh, Mother!
Mr. Worthing! I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Well, I do not deny that that is a serious blow, but after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered so much? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. Lady Bracknell can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell? Lady Bracknell, can you tell me who I am?
I am afraid that the information that I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor dear sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently you are Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have had a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. Oh, Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? And Algy, you young scoundrel, you will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me all of your life, not like a brother.
Well, not till today, old boy. I admit, I did my best.
Oh, my own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name?
Oh, good heavens. I almost forgot about that. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
Then the question had better be cleared up. The question had better be cleared up at once. Lady Bracknell, Aunt Augusta, a moment, at the moment when Miss Prism left me in that handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished upon you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened, that is settled. But now what was the name I was given? Let me know the worst.
Naturally, as the eldest son, you were named after your father.
Well, yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I do not at present recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt that he had one.
Algy, can you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, right, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. I see no reason why his name wouldn't appear in any military directory.
I have it. The army list of the last 40 years, so right here. These delightful records have been under my constant care. M. Generals: Malum, Maxbum, Magley, Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General 1869. Christian names: Earnest, John.
Earnest. Oh, I always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is Earnest after all. I mean, it naturally is Earnest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had a reason for disliking the name.
Ernest! My own Ernest! Oh, I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Oh, Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all of his life he had been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
Of course I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
After all, marrying one's cousin is perfectly fashionable.
Well, I must admit that the primitive church was mistaken in one regard. Well, Miss Prism, Letitia, will you do me the honor of taking my hand in marriage?
Oh, Frederick, at last!
Cecily, at last.
Oh, Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Thank you so much for joining us for the RMU Ashcat production of The Importance of Being Earnest.